So I'm looking at writing in the secondary classroom, and the reason I am looking at writing in the secondary classroom for my dissertation is twofold. The first is that I am a secondary English teacher, currently teaching in the middle school setting. But secondly, when I started doing my research, I wanted to look at what are some of the skills that students are needing to be successful in the post-secondary world. And an article that stood out to me is that businesses are spending billions of dollars, billions with a B, because their staff is struggling with the basic abilities to write. The College Board, which is a panel established by the National Commission on Writing, reported that they spend $3.1 billion on remedial writing training annually. And that to me is a staggering statistic because it proves that writing is a skill that students need to be successful when they leave high school and when they're graduating from college. So as I was reading this article, 50% of respondents take writing into consideration when hiring professional staff, and 80% of corporations with employment growth potential assess writing during hiring. So writing is an essential life skill. And I think a lot of teachers know this, but it's still something that many teachers are not quite sure how to approach in their classroom. And so this is one of the main reasons I want to focus on this as my dissertation. And so there's a problem. And what is that problem? We've had changes in legislation. So we've had No Child Left Behind, and then it's changed to the Common Core state standards. And it's shifted with the priority in writing. But although we've had changes at the legislative level, we have not had changes that have trickled down. And so the two main areas is that there has not been change in pre-service training. So while teachers go through their training, and a lot of times with secondary programming, you go through your program, and so you focus on whatever content area you are going to teach. And that typically is your major. And then you are supplemented with your education programming. Well, a lot of teachers don't get taught how to teach writing. And so a survey was conducted, and what they found, Graham's group found that about just over 60% of teachers received little to no training in how to teach, or how to teach writing. So what they found with that statistic is that because these teachers did not receive training in how to teach writing, they either fell back onto what they had learned through their own experiences as a student, what they went through, or they just didn't teach writing in their own classroom. So because of the inadequate training in how to teach writing, students in their own classroom were suffering. And so there's that issue. And then the second issue is a pedagogical issue. And the major issue with that is that there's this issue of putting formulaic teaching of writing first. And so the major formulaic model is the 5-paragraph essay. And so what has been found is that it does not allow for students to transfer knowledge. When we look at the Common Core state standards, students do not need to be able to write a compelling 5-paragraph essay with intro through body and conclusion. They need to be able to transfer their ideas across vast genres. They need to be able to write for a variety of audiences. And the issue is that, yes, you can have a great 5-paragraph essay, but that doesn't lend itself for a variety of forms. And so what I have found is that the issue is that these students are going to college and they are struggling. And so the form of a 5-paragraph essay does not fit with many college writing assignments. And so students are struggling to succeed in the post-secondary world, but they also are not learning writing skills that are transferable. So what can be done? And so currently there are two major areas that I have currently focused on. And one is more of an instructional tool, and that's the use of mentor text. This breaks the mold of a formulaic mold of teaching, and that allows teachers who are uncomfortable with teaching writing to serve as more of a facilitator as opposed to an expert, because you are utilizing the experts of published authors to be the teacher, and you are guiding students on analyzing the craft of the published author. So you are guiding students in analyzing craft, so using literature to be the expert, and then the teacher is more of the guide. But the drawback to this is that you have to explicitly teach students how to engage in this type of reading. And so teachers need to spend the time choosing appropriate literature, making sure it meets the certain writing goals you need, and teaching students how to interact with this type of content, analyzing for craft as opposed to content. Technology is another benefit. There has been a boom of technology. Many districts are now one-to-one. I am not in that type of district, but it allows for collaboration and more authentic writing experiences. And when I say authentic writing experiences, a lot of teachers assume authentic writing experiences are more on a digital platform, such as blogs and reviews, infographics, things like that. And the issue with this is that it requires teachers to be hyper vigilant, and they need to be aware of what students are doing, because writing is a process, and a lot of times what happens is that when you get on technology, students are so used to utilizing technology on a regular basis with social media that they do not engage with the full process. So teachers need to remember that technology is a tool, and that as well, a lot of the research is showing that a lot of times students don't engage with the full process. So teachers need to be hyper aware of what's going on. So what am I wanting to focus on? My idea has shifted a little bit. I still want to look at writing as an instructional tool, but focusing more on the nuances of what writing is and what writing instruction can look like. So time is something that keeps being brought up in the research. Students need more time. Well, what is that? How much time? What does it need to look like? So what are the length of assignments? Is there something versus a low stakes assignment versus a high stakes assignment? I think about a lot of writing pieces in terms of a summative piece at the very end. So can students improve with really explicit instruction that is more polished, but instead of doing a 2-page paper, maybe they're doing a 1 to 3 paragraph paper, but they're doing that more frequently, and it's lower stakes, not as many points, but they keep doing it over and over and over again. Would that be better? So looking at that idea as opposed to doing one paper a semester or a quarter. And then what must teachers spend their time on to improve student writing? So there's the grammar argument, how should grammar be taught? There's the content argument, focusing more on what are their ideas, focusing on craft. So what do teachers need to spend their time on in order for writing instruction to improve? Feedback. There's a lot of idea about feedback, and what do we need to do to encourage students, help them grow? So my question is, what is meaningful for them? And how do I get that back to them? I think this is a huge problem and battle secondary teachers face. I mean, when you have between 110 and 130 students that you see every day, getting quick, meaningful feedback to them so they can improve their writing is huge. What does that look like? What does it sound like? How can you achieve that without drowning as a teacher yourself? And then at what point in the writing process is that feedback most positive and most meaningful? So a lot of the research says don't do it at the very end, because then all you're doing is commenting on the grade, defending your grade to the student, and they don't utilize that feedback. focus more on the process. So when during that process do you give it? How often do you give it? Do you focus, say, I'm focusing on these elements? That's when we give you feedback on. So how do you do that? What does that look like? So these two ideas are currently what I am playing around with. And so through my research, this is what I'm looking at. So really focusing on writing instruction, focusing on the nuances and kind of the overarching ideas that I've been seeing in the research, but there's not explicit goals currently that have been addressed or answers to be given to help teachers implement strong changes in the classroom.